Hi, and welcome back to Football Made Simple. The round of 16 continued as Spain and Croatia faced off. Both sides haven't been quite at their best, but they served up the game of the tournament so far, with Spain coming out 5-3 winners after extra time, thanks to goals by Sarabia, Azpilicueta, Torres, Morata and Oyarzabal, whilst a Pedri own goal, Orsic and Pasalic did the damage for the Croatians. The XG after 90 minutes and after extra time showed just how end-to-end and how close the game was. But what tactics did both managers use? Let's take a look. A quick reminder of both teams' formations, as you can see courtesy of our video sponsor, OneFootball. OneFootball is the best football app on the market, giving you formations like this, stats, match commentary and so much more to keep you up to date during the match. And now, they even have a special Euros section that they've introduced, where you can easily access the latest news and scores from the tournament. The best part is you can get it absolutely free for Android or iOS through the link in the description below. Let's start with Spain in possession, as they dominated with 68% of the ball. Early on, Croatia weren't looking to press particularly high, so from goal kicks, Simon could usually go short to a centre-back. And Croatia did initially defend in a 4-1-4-1 with Brozovic deeper and looking to sweep up. And this meant that there was roughly a man-to-man structure in the midfield with this 3 versus 3. However, it would mean that Busquets would often have space deeper in this pocket in which to dictate the game, which he managed to do, ending with the second most touches and passes on the pitch. But Modric would often look to push up alongside Petkovic, creating a rough 4-4-2 shape, whilst trying to use their cover shadows in order to close down the passing lane into Busquets. So, to help keep possession more easily, Spain needed a 3 versus 2 advantage in deeper regions, which they managed by having Azpilicueta often start a lot deeper as the third centre-back, whilst Gaia was much more offensive, pushing up on the left. But this defensive shape could cause Croatia problems in midfield, as they were now 3 versus 2 down. Spain could switch to a double pivot with Koke dropping in alongside Busquets, whilst Pedri would push higher up the pitch, and there was plenty of space between the lines at times, as Spain's front 3 stayed high and wide, forcing Croatia's centre-backs deep. This meant that if a pivot did receive the ball, and Brozovic or Kovacic was drawn into pressing, this would create even more space between the lines for Pedri to receive and then look to create. When Spain go 2-1 up, we do see some of these problems for Croatia. Modric and Kovacic are both pressing Koke and Busquets, meaning that Brozovic is the sole midfielder left deeper. So when Azpilicueta pushes into the midfield drawing Brozovic, it means that Pedri now has space between the lines where he can operate. He then advances and plays it out to Ferran, who is high and wide, and he can then find Azpilicueta with a pinpoint cross, who had continued his run. But when Spain used a single pivot, Koke and Pedri would both push high and wide into the half spaces. In the second half, Croatia did use a 4-2-3-1 when defending at times, which would allow a midfielder to stay tighter to Busquets and limit his influence. But before they did this, they had major problems, as Spain's midfield shape created problems for the 4-4-2, as Koke and Pedri high up would be hard to pick up, particularly with Gaia and Ferran providing the width. And Spain were also excellent at overloading the left-hand side. Laporte would often push higher up, and Gaia provided the width, allowing Sarabia to come narrow, which would then free Pedri, who could drift around the pitch, but often move deeper down the left-hand side. And we could then see Pedri or Laporte look for the left-back making the run on the blind side of the full-back if he was poorly tracked. And in the second half, Pedri often combined with Ferran, who had switched over to the left-hand side, and Ferran often looked to get the cross into the back post, with Azpilicueta often pushing high up as well, as they looked to overload Guardiola. But with the left-hand side overloaded, and Rebic in particular being slow to track back, it meant that Guardiola was often caught in two mind between moving narrow to track Koke or moving wide to track Ferran. So when he was too narrow, Torres could receive the direct switch and then look to take on his man or have a cross. But we also saw that when Guardiola was wider, there was space between the centre-backs, and it led to a massive chance when Koke was able to make the run between them. And a lot of Croatia's best moments came in transition. With Spain having pushed two midfielders high up in possession, they faced several problems in transition, particularly down the left-hand side. Rebic not tracking back as much when out of possession was a problem, but on the transition it gave Croatia an advantage, especially when Azpilicueta had pushed higher up, as he could receive the ball and look to drive higher up the pitch. And credit must be given for the decision to bring on Orsic and Pasalic to operate down the left-hand side, as they were so much more effective. Pasalic, when he received the wrong side of the midfielder, was quicker to push higher up with the ball, which would then often force Azpilicueta to remain narrow, and this would allow Orsic to have space out wide to receive, and he was great at then looking to swing in across. And this does lead to a big chance in extra time. Ruiz is caught higher up the pitch, allowing the dropping forward to pick up the ball in space. He can then play it out to Pasalic, who has space on the left-hand side as Ruiz has committed himself higher up the pitch. This forces Azpilicueta to move narrow, giving Orsic space on the flanks. His cross then leads to a massive chance. And of course, we see some of this in the equalising goal. With the ball in midfield, Pasalic picks up the ball in a great position, the wrong side of Ruiz. Orsic is then in a great position providing the width down the left-hand side, and he finds him. Orsic then gets the space out wide to get the cross in as Azpilicueta had been narrow, and he puts in the perfect ball that Pasalic can now finish, as Croatia were committing bodies into the box. Overall, this game was a massive win for fans from an entertainment point of view, but if their defense remains this shaky, Spain may struggle to progress any further. But what did you make of the match? A lot went on in this match, and of course, I can't cover all the tactics, so drop anything else you noticed down below. And if you want even more content whilst helping to support the channel, consider checking out my Patreon at patreon.com/footballmadesimple. You'll get early access to videos, exclusive videos, as well as access to the upcoming FMS video podcast. But that's all for today, and remember, keep it simple.